What's up, guys? Happy Tuesday. Hopefully, everybody succeeded in that wild Monday night of NBA DFS. That was pretty crazy with all those high scores. And pretty much like everybody went off. There was very few bad plays on this slate.
Yeah, it was just about whether you made the better play.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I mean, I got a 324.75 in my cash game, and I had to sweat. How many times have you had to sweat almost 325 in cash games? It's almost never going to be that high. It does happen every once in a while when the chalk goes off, but everybody went off last night. You know, Towns at crazy high ownership went off. And we were just talking about all the guys that, like, there was almost no bad nights with the exception of Quinn Cook. You know what I mean? That didn't have a good night that were popular. So huge scores. Hopefully most of you guys came out on top of it, but man, it's not like that a lot, but a total classic NBA DFS night where you get all your lineups set. Then you find out Nico's not playing. So you got to shift over to Julius Randle for half the crowd. Jared Allen ended up not playing because of the illness. So then Rondé Hollis-Jefferson and Ed Davis came into it. Man, it's just nuts.
Yeah, it was definitely a welcome back to the NBA moment.
I'm kidding. And just one quick note for everybody out there. So we talked a couple of weeks, how there was a lot of blowouts to open up the season, and it was really affecting scores, good or bad. The games have been routinely closer now that teams got their flow a little bit. They've gotten back into used to playing with one another. They're in better shape and things like that. So while blowouts can still happen every night, I don't know if you guys have been watching this or not, but the games are routinely closer and competitive more often now, which is just good for the NBA DFS game as a whole, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's good for everything.
Like, you hate losing because your guy balls for 2.5 quarters, but then their team's up by 40, so he doesn't have to play in the fourth.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anyways, guys, let's get into this 3-game slate. If you are new to the station, I'm Ryan. This is Matt. Want more videos, press that red button that says subscribe. And if you want the full-length video where we break down basically every single player on the slate, just go sign up to be a customer at the website. You'll get our end of the day daily write-up for those of you who don't have time to watch videos and want all the details. Let's move into this evening where your Cleveland Cavaliers, who I think you still think they're a championship team, right?
Yeah, aren't they the contenders? Aren't they the number one contenders to make it out of the East?
Yeah, they're basically Toronto. No, I think this just goes to speak about how great LeBron James is, the fact that he leaves and now it's possibly the worst team in basketball. Either way, they are down bodies left and right. Obviously, we know Love's been out for a while now. Chetty's not going to play tonight. George Hill isn't around. A guy that should be extremely chalky this evening is going to be Larry Nance Jr. He's a better DFS player than a real-life player. I like the guy. I think I like watching him, but there's something about him that he doesn't stay on the floor no matter where he is for some reason. I don't know if you've kind of noticed the same thing.
Most definitely I've noticed the same thing, and it's the most frustrating part of it is you can't put your finger on exactly what it is, but there's definitely something there because the coaches won't leave him out there for that long. He's rock solid tonight because they're down so many bodies, but just imagine if the coaches actually liked him.
Right. He's a good DFS player, though. He gets rebounds, block shots, steals. He's not exactly a great offensive threat, but he'll get you a few different ways with some putbacks. He just put up a 30 spot the other day playing 31 minutes. I think the 31 minutes is the key number right there. He shot 1 of 8 and went 0 of 2 from the line. There is room for improvement today. I don't know. He's going to play a lot of minutes. He's going to be really popular. Lock him into your cash games, but he might be a guy that's even difficult to get away from in GPPs.
Yeah, I watched a lot of that game against the Bulls, and because of his athleticism, he walked into all those points. The blocks he had were really impressive. I believe he had 4 blocks that day, double-digit boards. Whenever you can score 2 points and pick up 30 DK points, you're doing something right.
Right, and you're like you brought up his athleticism. He's able to get those putbacks, the blocks, the steals, the dunks, all the things that go along with it. He rolls into DFS points pretty easy, and knowing that he's going to be popular today, you definitely run him out into your cash games. I can always get fading somebody in GPPs, but this just doesn't seem like the spot.
Yeah, and for me, as kind of we talked about before, all 3 games have big-time question marks in terms of how they're going to play out. You've got the game in Golden State with the best team in the league against one of the worst teams in the league. You've got the game in Denver with a really good defensive team in Denver and a Houston team that's not playing fast. There's definitely blowout concerns in this game, but at the end of the day, I wouldn't be surprised if this game was the game I targeted most.
Also, the Cavs don't have enough bodies to like really pull guys out in a blowout situation. I mean, it would have to be a major point discrepancy, and they're at home, so let's give them the benefit of the doubt, and then they can keep it semi-competitive against but not a great Charlotte team.
Great way to put it.
All right, so you're a big Tristan Thompson guy tonight.
Yeah, so kind of kind of piggybacking off the Nance call, Thompson does it in other ways. While Nance does it with athleticism, Thompson does it with hard work and kind of grittiness on the boards. He looks good right now, and he's a guy we talked about. Nance, the coach is not necessarily loving him. The coaches trust Tristan Thompson. He's playing a ton of minutes right now. He's their big body, and he's not sexy. When you roster him, it's not going to be a guy that is going to put up a ton of exciting plays, but he rebounds with the best of them. And because he's playing so many minutes, he's scoring double digits right now. I think that he is a good bet for 30 to 40 DK points tonight.
He's got 40 plus and 3 of 6. He's a guy that I prefer in GPPs simply because he's a little bit all over the board and his price isn't cheap, but he's shown upside in half of his last 6 games. The Hornets have been giving up more points to centers lately, although I do want people to temper their expectations there. The shift in the statistics had a lot to do with Joel Embiid's monster game against them. When an opposing center puts up damn near 80, it is going to reflect statistically what you're giving up to the center position. Tristan Thompson is not Joel Embiid. Really, not many people are Joel Embiid, so it's not quite the same thing. But the one thing I always like about Tristan is, in my opinion, the easiest statistic to replicate on a night in and night out basis are your rebounds. A guy like Thompson, who's a very quality rebounder, he's going to average 10 this year. He's in a good bet to at least give you those 12.5 points right there. Now, of course, he's going to walk into a couple of putbacks, a couple of easy buckets, the occasional blocker steal as well. He's probably not going to rack up the assists on you, but because this team doesn't have a lot of people, he might even throw a couple of those in there tonight.
Yeah, man. And you kind of been talking about this. I remember you brought it up last year. He is one of the better offensive rebounders in the game for all his, kind of downfalls that we've talked about, because he wasn't necessarily a great complement to LeBron. He still is a very good inside player. His price is getting up there. Once it gets a little bit higher, on a full slate, I might not have interest. But on this slate, again, in a game we like, I love your point about the rebounds. He just seems like a solid guy who can get upside tonight.
All right. Next up, Miles Bridges. You wanted to bring him up today for GPP purposes. I think he's okay anywhere. And I look at it this way. If you're looking to play the studs tonight, you're going to need a couple of these low-cost guys. He seems like a pretty safe bet for, 14 to 25 points, probably going to come in right around 20.
Yeah, the other thing I like about this is no Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. So while he's not a guy that we really ever roster, he gets minutes in Charlotte, and a lot of those at that. Bridges is just a better player. I think before the year is done, Bridges will kind of take over his role. Top 10 pick from Michigan State. This kid is good. He's not as polished yet as a couple of the other rookies we've seen, but he's right up there in terms of how talented he is. Assuming that he plays a few more minutes today, I think this could be a nice breakout spot for him.
It's possible. Again, we brought it up. While we don't want to rely on it, and of course, every time somebody plays the Cavaliers, there's always the blow-up potential. So the Hornets could potentially run out that second unit for a couple extra minutes. Maybe he picks up a couple of those Kidd-Gilchrist minutes. The Hornets are a pretty deep team as far as their secondary talent. Like, there's Kemba. Mm-hmm. There's about 8 guys below that who are all really close from a talent level perspective. You know what I mean? Like, you got Batum, Jeremy Lamb, but those guys aren't that much better than Miles Bridges and Tony Parker, for example. So they'll spread it around a little bit. But if you have the opportunity, let your rookie get some time and continue to develop him.
Yeah, I love that point. Just kind of take that a step further, and you're so right. All those guys are kind of lumped into one group. Batum, you might say, is like the best player right now, but I would venture to say that this is the guy they want to be the complement to Kemba.
Right. Like, yeah, Batum's better than Malik Monk right now, but he ain't that much better than Malik Monk. This is not Steph Curry versus,
right.
Book or something like that. There is not that huge of a discrepancy.
Exactly.
Speaking of the Golden State Warriors, fun game to watch last night. Obviously had to stay up for this one. I don't know if you did, but you're East Coast, I'm Central, so I got an hour on you. Very good game. Brought this to OT. Great comeback at the end by the Warriors. Didn't end the way they'd like it. Durant fouls out at the beginning of OT on a really bad call. Harold did the rip move or whatever, and Durant got all ball, and they called him out, which is weird because I feel like Durant should have fouled out 4 times before that, but they wanted to keep him in the game, just because you don't want Kevin Durant, the best player, to fall out. And then they call him out, into overtime on a ticky-tack. It was just weird. Doesn't really matter. It was a fun game, but we got Golden State tonight, tail end of a back-to-back against an Atlanta team that just played the Lakers really competitive. Hopefully you see the best of them tonight, and they're not on the tail end of a back-to-back, so they should have a little bit more energy to try to at least keep this one semi-competitive through 4 quarters. Klay Thompson, to me, is just the pure definition of a solid cash game play when Steph Curry is out. His role is more defined. He becomes the clear-cut number 2 scorer on this team, so he's not third on the pecking order anymore. This is a guy that I think you can just pencil in for about 35 points tonight, give or take, and the Hawks give up DFS points to everybody.
Yeah, I think kind of this game is tough to navigate through because we're not sure how it's going to play out. But regardless, I think Klay is the guy that will be rock solid no matter what. I like all your points. I think he's just a guy that you can kind of lock in and feel comfortable with what you're going to get.
Now, if you're trying to double stud, it's going to be tough to afford him. And that is one possible negative part about him. Like if you're trying to double up on Durant and Harden tonight, which I can understand why somebody would want to do that, it does become tough to roster him. But if you're only going to stud up once and attack a couple of the mid-tier guys, like he's a guy I just lock into my cash game because I expect about 35 points from him tonight. But he also offers GPP upside, which is nice because even though he doesn't do it routinely, we know those big games are out there. We saw the one against Chicago a couple of weeks ago. He is capable of that. And the shot looks pure right now, which it does almost every time he's out there.
Yeah, for some reason, I kind of feel like this could be an upside game for him. Not exactly sure why.
Probably because the Hawks suck.
Yeah, that's exactly why.
Yeah, the Hawks give up DFS points to everybody. Like we're over a month into the NBA DFS season now, so I think most people are really starting to figure out which teams it are that you pick on a nightly basis. The New Orleans Pelicans tend to give up a lot of DFS points because of the pace of play and being completely offensive oriented. The Sacramento Kings are our little darling for where to go to as far as picking on guys against them. The Atlanta Hawks are another one that are right up there. And the Lakers, depending on which day, are up and down. But we're starting to figure out who those weak targets are. And the Atlanta Hawks are one of the weakest. You just got to hope that they don't get down by 30.
Exactly.
All right, guys, that's what we got for today. If you want the full-length show, go sign up to be a member. Other than that, we appreciate you all watching. Have yourself a good Monday, and we will see you here later today.
Thanks, guys.